Ever wondered what lies beneath the leather-clad surface of motorcycle clubs? While many are just groups of free-spirited riders, there are those infamous few who tarnish the reputation of the entire biking community. Among them, the Hells Angels stand out as the epitome of outlaw bikers, known far and wide for their notoriety. But within even this notorious gang, there are individuals who strike fear into the hearts of law enforcement, with the FBI keeping a close eye on their every move. Today, we're delving deep into the lives of these mysterious figures whose names are whispered in hushed tones among those who walk the thin blue line. Our first entry into the world of the feared Hells Angels is none other than Maurice M Busher. Why does his name strike fear into the hearts of FBI agents? Well, let's just say there's a laundry list of reasons. Boucher rose to infamy as Montreal's drug kingpin, wielding his Hells Angels leadership as a tool of fear and coercion. Anyone who dared to oppose him met a grisly fate. Submission or death were the only options. Born in 1953 into the harsh realities of poverty, Boucher was raised in a tumultuous household, where violence was as common as the air he breathed. His father's ties to the mafia and the construction industry laid the groundwork for Boucher's twisted path. Dropping out of school at a young age, he embraced a life of crime with open arms, fueled by his insatiable thirst for wealth and power. Did you know that his criminal career began with a botched grocery store robbery in 1974, landing him behind bars? But instead of reforming, Boucher was deeply inspired by the underworld, sharpening his skills alongside fellow inmates. By the early 1980s, he had aligned himself with the SS, a notorious white supremacist gang, where his thirst for violence and his knack for criminal enterprise found a home. While initially flying under the radar of law enforcement, Boucher's rise through the ranks of the criminal underworld was swift. From petty crimes to drug dealing, his notoriety grew, cementing his status as one of the most feared figures in the biker community. But wait till you hear this. Boucher's journey into the Hells Angels was a significant step. It changed everything for him. It happened on May 3rd, 1987, and by 1994, he had earned a fearsome reputation among Montreal's drug dealers. However, tensions within the Hells Angels escalated when 5 members were killed in what became known as the Lennoxville Massacre. With a leadership vacuum, Boucher seized the opportunity to rebuild the gang. Boucher formed a new faction within the group, the Nomads, with strict entry requirements, including committing murder to thwart undercover officers. Tensions soared with the Quebec Biker War following Pierre Dow's murder in 1994 by the rival Rock Machine Gang, leading to a prolonged conflict claiming over 160 lives, including innocent bystanders like 11-year-old Daniel Desrochers. Despite facing challenges, the Hells Angels maintained control, surviving assassination attempts like one foiled at a restaurant. Boucher, meanwhile, plotted to disrupt the justice system, ordering the killings of 2 prison guards to intimidate potential witnesses. As the Rock Machine weakened, they sought support from the U.S. bandidos, prompting Boucher to consider a truce, but police intervention led to Operation Springtime in 2001. A massive law enforcement operation ensued, resulting in the arrest of 139 Hells Angels members, including Boucher. Despite trials and convictions, the gang quickly recovered, continuing criminal operations. However, Boucher's fate was sealed. Boucher received a life sentence for conspiracy to murder and orchestrated violence from behind bars. Allegedly, Hells Angels leaders in the United States were displeased with the negative attention Boucher brought to the gang. Consequently, a contract was issued for his assassination while in prison. Additionally, he faced threats from the Indian Posse, an Aboriginal street gang, due to conflicts with a Hells Angels-affiliated group called the Zigzag Crew. In October 2010, under orders from Danny Wolf, a member of the Indian Posse stabbed Boucher. However, he survived the attack. 5 years later, Boucher and another individual were charged with attempting to murder a fellow inmate. In 2015, Boucher received a cancer diagnosis. Ultimately, it wasn't his criminal adversaries but the disease that claimed his life in July 2022 at the age of 69. The next person on the FBI list is George Christie, also known as the guy who, some say, betrayed the Hells Angels. He spent 40 years with them, and for 35 of those years, he was in charge of the Ventura, California chapter. Back in the mid-1950s, when George was just a kid in California, he saw a biker with long hair and a denim jacket for the first time and thought, "That's the life for me." By the late 60s, after a brief time as a Marine reservist, he was hanging out with other outlaw motorcycle clubs like the Question Marks and Satan Slaves in California. But his ultimate goal was always to join the Hells Angels, which he often describes as akin to running away to join the circus. Finally, the day he had waited for all his life had arrived. In the mid-70s, Christie achieved his dream. From establishing the Ventura, California chapter, to participating in the Los Angeles Olympic Torch Relay, and even starring in his own series on the History Channel, Outlaw Chronicles, Christie became perhaps the most prominent, albeit controversial, public figure associated with a highly divisive group. Given his high-profile involvement, it's unsurprising that Christie encountered legal troubles along the way. One notable incident involved accusations of plotting a murder for hire against the leader of the Mexican Mafia prison gang, although he was ultimately acquitted in 1987. Additionally, in 2011, he faced charges related to the firebombing of rival tattoo parlors 4 years earlier, pleading guilty to 1 count and serving approximately 1 year in prison. It was during this period that Christie claims he made the decision to leave the group he once considered his home, a departure marked by speculation that he was ousted for allegedly cooperating with government authorities. It is also believed that Christie had a different mindset that often clashed with the views of other members. Christie decided to cut ties with the club because he felt they had become the very people they originally rebelled against. That's exactly what he told them at the meeting when he left. At one point, they used to interact with all the clubs along the coast, but by 2011, they were in conflict with every major outlaw motorcycle club in the United States, and law enforcement too. Some lost sight of the original purpose of the outlaw lifestyle. It became more like a military operation, with one faction battling another like armies. The next member of the Hells Angels was like something out of a horror story. Apache Trudeau was infamous for murdering 6 of his fellow Hells Angels members. What was his deal? Trudeau was the most deadly member of the motorcycle club. He confessed to killing over 40 people, some innocent, most not, using guns, knives, fists, and explosives between 1970 and 1985. However, Trudeau wasn't initially part of the plan to kill his fellow members. In fact, he was supposed to be one of the victims, but the revenge he exacted on his former club caused significant damage to its leadership and made him notorious long after his death. Trudeau's criminal career began in 1968 when he joined the Popeyes Motorcycle Club in East End, Montreal at the age of 22. The Popeyes were known for typical gang activities like drugs, prostitution, extortion, and theft. However, even back then, Trudeau stood out from his fellow bikers. Trudeau, infamously known as Apache, was a ruthless killer whose actions terrorized Montreal's criminal underworld in the 1970s and 1980s. A member of the Popeyes, which later merged with the Hells Angels, Trudeau's murderous spree escalated after joining the notorious biker gang. His expertise with explosives earned him the nickname the Mad Bumper, as he orchestrated bombings, shootings, and other violent acts, leaving a trail of death and destruction in his wake. Did you know that Trudeau's notoriety extended beyond the biker world? He carried out hits for the West End Gang, a powerful criminal organization in Montreal. His involvement in high-profile assassinations, including those of fellow Hells Angels members, showcased his ruthlessness and earned him a feared reputation. Despite his deadly deeds, Trudeau's downfall came when he was arrested and faced a lengthy prison sentence. In a bid to reduce his time behind bars, he struck a deal with authorities, agreeing to testify against his former associates in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony led to numerous convictions and shed light on the inner workings of the Hells Angels, but it also sparked controversy over the use of informants in criminal cases. Trudeau's life after prison was marked by further legal troubles and health issues, including a battle with cancer. During a parole hearing in July 2008, the Montreal Gazette portrayed him as a skeleton of a man, relying on a wheelchair for mobility and speaking with a weak, raspy voice. When questioned about his terminal illness and his perspective on death, Trudeau remarked, "I view it as a punishment." When asked about his goals for the time he had left, he expressed a desire to prove to my mother that I'm a good person. Following his parole approval, Trudeau passed away shortly thereafter, with few expressing grief over his death.